Welcome, everybody, to the Wholesaling Inc. podcast. I am your host, Brent Daniels, and welcome. If this is your first time coming across this and you have been searching around for the right podcast to listen to get the absolute best instruction for getting your first wholesale deal or for scaling your wholesaling business, this is it. If you are one of our long-time listeners, welcome back again. You guys are the absolute best. We love you so much. Now let's start this thing out with a little bit of belief. Okay, let's think about belief for just a second. Now, if you've never done a real estate deal, if you are just coming into the real estate industry for the first time, how do you have the belief that you can do this? Okay, the faith that you can do a real estate wholesale transaction. And what that comes down to is certainty. Okay, like if belief is a tabletop, what are the legs that are underneath it? And those are all reference experiences, okay? But Brent, what if I don't have any reference experiences? What if I've never done anything? What if I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I've been inspired, I feel like I can do this, I have this burning passion to be a real estate entrepreneur, but I don't have any reference experiences. That is the beauty of this podcast. The beauty of this podcast is we interview the most incredible people from around the country that are actually taking action every single day, and they're giving you inspiration so that you know that you can do it too. And I am telling you, the interview that I have today is going to blow your mind, because I am telling you, this is one of those true stories where you hear about the persistence, right? Persistence is kind of like this, overall term that covers a lot of different things, a lot of different characteristics, but you hear about persistence, you hear about faith, you hear about certainty, and you hear about not wanting to do a deal, but having that must factor. I must be successful in wholesaling. I must put together a real estate transaction. I must be a successful real estate entrepreneur. It is a huge difference between wanting to do something. Wanting got you to this podcast. Wanting to gets you to the starting line. But I must succeed. I must not have a job ever again. I must show my husband, my parents, my significant other, my high school principal, that I could be a successful entrepreneur, whatever it is. And with that, I want to introduce a powerful woman coming out of San Antonio, Miss Jenny Ordonez. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I
Thank you
am
for having me.
I am on fire today. I am absolutely on fire because you put me on fire. You really did. You posted something to the TTP private Facebook group and it blew everybody. I don't think anybody got more comments on a post in our
Oh,
group than you,
awesome.
right?
There's a lot of comments, yes, and it
It's
was
just
very, yeah.
absolutely incredible. So, with that, go ahead. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about your experience. Tell me about what's going on.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm originally from Okinawa, Japan. Fun fact. I am married to my husband, who's active duty, so we move around quite frequently. College dropout, so I thought that making money wasn't, something that I could do, or at least, that a lot of money. And then I have two children.
Yep.
So that's my background. Before wholesaling, I was mainly processing mortgage loans. I was doing that for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved to San Antonio, because again, we move around a lot, I was pregnant 3 weeks before my due date, and my boss essentially fired all the processors. He looked at me and he's like, "You have your loan officer's license. That's what you're going to do. You're going to be solely commission based from now on, sink or swim."
Yep.
And so I kind of stumbled upon wholesaling around that time. It was actually a little after I gave birth, but I was like, well, I'm in a transitional phase anyways. I'm just going to go full throttle and transition completely into wholesaling instead. So that's how I started.
Incredible. So where were you living at the time? Were you in San Antonio?
Yes, I was in San Antonio. I had been here for almost a year at that time. So, of course, even as a loan officer, I didn't have those connections. I hadn't bond with realtors to have them bring me those leads or even qualified leads because, I mean, as people may know, if they're a realtor, typically they don't want to go with a new loan officer if they already got something good going on, a for sure thing. So it was really, really hard to try and earn someone's business, let alone when I was about ready to sneeze out a baby at any moment.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's incredible because I remember our welcome call. You're like, you were just about to have your second child, or you just did. What did you
I
already?
just had him.
Yeah.
I just had him.
And you were
Yeah.
saying your schedule was super tight. You were like, I mean, as a new mom, I mean, it's crazy town. I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally like there's no way to time block things. There's no way to like be on a set schedule. I mean, it is crazy, right? So how did you do it? How did you transition? Not only that, but what gave you the confidence? What gave you the confidence to say, okay, I can be a mom of two. My husband's in the military,
Hmm.
and you're at home, right? You were
Yeah.
staying at home doing all
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah. What gave me the confidence? So I just knew that, even when I was processing, I was only seeing my daughter an hour and a half, during the day. And I feel like the compensation wasn't even worth it.
Yeah,
It's not like I'm here raking in the big bucks. I mean, I just didn't want to do that anymore. And so, and also I'm very optimistic by default. So I was like, yeah, sure, I could do it. Loans, wholesaling, pretty sure it's the same thing. It's not the same thing, but then I was just like, I'll do it. What do I have to lose at this point? It's not like, you know, I didn't have a job to lose. They already put me on commission base anyways, and I
right.
lost all my. I hadn't been working for a year at the time, so I didn't qualify for maternity leave. So I had saved up all my PTO, my paid time off,
Yep.
to for that date, and then once they put me on commission, I lost all of it. And so there was nothing holding me back really at that point.
Well, and I think I think that you said something there that is often overlooked, and I think that's just being super optimistic. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Do you think? I mean, have you always been that way? Were you born that way, or is this something that you kind of? I mean, is there something in your life that happened that made you optimistic? Was it just your upbringing? Like, I think that I really think it's interesting. Is this something that we're born with, or is this something that we learn? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it's almost a combination of both.
Okay.
So I think maybe I do have an optimistic personality, but where I come from, Okinawa is an island. They're very chill. And it's a saying that kind of translates to everything's going to be okay, kind of that saying. And
Really?
it's true. Yeah. And it's true. I feel
Wow.
like no matter how bad things were, everything was kind of okay at the end. It wasn't as bad as I initially thought it was going to be. It's fine. It's fine. And so, again, combination of both, I think.
Yeah, and so how do you start out in this business
Hmm.
with a brand new baby
Hmm.
and how far apart are your kids?
They're 2 years apart.
2 years apart. So you have
Yeah.
a crazy toddler, a 2 year
Yeah.
old.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's always trying to kill my son. Son's always trying to kill himself because he's trying to climb up the stairs
Of
and whatnot.
course.
So yeah, it's just
So then
it's
how do you fit
tricky.
this into your schedule? How do you fit because you knew that traditional marketing wasn't the route for you, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
knew that you had to be proactive. You had to do it on the times that you had. You like how do you figure that all out? How do you schedule all that?
So initially, again, schedule was just not a thing because a newborn baby is just they eat and they sleep on demand.
Yep.
So I would try and cold call while he was sleeping, and then as he got older, when I was maybe got a deal or two deals in, then I would try and hire someone to go with me on my appointments and just walk with them in a stroller while I
Yep.
talk to the seller.
Yep.
That way, I don't want to bring I
That's
don't want to bring a
crazy.
toddler or a baby to the appointment just for mainly safety issues, but also, I feel like it's a little bit difficult to focus on, the seller and making it all about them. So again, just had someone walk around the block for maybe about an hour during the appointments. Just kind of have to roll with the punches at that point.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah.
so this is with now. Is that lead follow up? Is that actually prospecting? Like, when would you be reaching out, or did you hire somebody to do that?
So, when I'm out like seeing a person, it would typically be, after I cold call and it's a lead. They said
So
that
you would cold call yourself.
yes, I was cold calling myself.
So how
Yeah.
did you? So baby's asleep, you make calls.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what about your 2-year-old?
2-year-old, so she was at daycare,
Got
and
it.
that's why I only got to see her like an hour and a half while I was working, is
Mm-hmm.
because, by the time I dropped her off and I picked her up, she, at that time, she used to go to bed at 7. So I come home, I'm making dinner, bath, maybe, get to play with her for 30 minutes and then bedtime. So, right now I have a lot more flexibility where I'll pick her up earlier because I want to, and
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be with her. So, it's a lot. I have a lot more bonding time now.
So listen, everybody listening to this, listen.
Mhm.
She has a baby that's sleeping. And instead of, just relaxing, instead of just chilling, her brain is ready to go. Like it was like the opportunity. You were just waiting for the baby to go to sleep so that you could get on the phone and call strangers and ask them if they would consider an offer on their property. I mean, you sound like a crazy woman.
Well, when you put it that way, it does sound like I'm a crazy woman. Yeah,
But you started building it up and building it up
yeah.
and building it up. And I remember you really wanted to understand the script. You really wanted to understand, the way to communicate with people. What was the right list? What were the right? You needed to get the most bang for your time possible because you had short windows when the baby was sleeping that you were able to make these calls. And by the way, how incredible is that? You're just incredible. That's crazy. Like I
Oh,
remember just being a dad of a newborn and I was like napping when they were napping. You know what I mean? Like you're just
yeah.
you're wired really, really, really incredible. And I just that's huge that you're being proactive during those times. You didn't let the excuse, you didn't say, you know what, I'm gonna push this off, I'm gonna push this off, I'm gonna push this off. I mean maybe some days you did, but
Mhm.
for the most part, you started getting consistent, and then you started really getting some leads, and then you started really making an impact.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
talk to me about that. Talk to me about um, talk to me about when you're starting out, or talk to the audience about when you're starting to make calls for the first time. And I'm going to go run and grab the bell. It's going to be 20 seconds. But tell people about the first, because we need to ring that bell because it's going to be amazing. But
Okay.
tell people about the first time that you started making those calls.
So the first time I started making those calls, I'm pretty sure I was a train wreck because I got very, very nervous. Even though I had the script, I'm pretty sure I jumbled up all the words together. Very embarrassing. And in fact, one of the times my son had just woken up. So as I'm trying to prospect this lead, you hear a screaming baby in the background, like like bloody murder type screaming. Very awkward. Um, but I do get analysis paralysis, so I couldn't really stop to think before I call because that's always my downfall is that well no let me think about this, and I take too much time analyzing, so I just have to click that call button. And in fact, when I first started, I was nervous. I didn't want to do the auto dialer. I did the click to call
Yep.
because, again, I was so nervous. But finally, I just did the auto dialer, and I was like, man, I should have done this
A
like from the
long
get
time
go.
ago.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
and the big thing is you've got to get everything set up absolutely so that you press go and you can start talking to people because if you distract yourself, you're going to stop. And
yeah,
I say the same thing with my Driving for Dollars team or anybody out there that's driving for dollars. If you see a for sale by owner, if you
mm,
see somebody that's like has a estate sale, stop
mm,
the car, get out, go talk to them. If they've
yeah,
got a number on their lawn that says for sale by owner, call them now. Don't even think about it because you will come up with reasons not to call.
yeah, Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I'm still guilty. It's still something that I have to work on to this day. But definitely the what do you call it? The creative avoidance
Yep.
struggle is real.
Oh, for
So
sure.
yeah, I have to keep myself in check all the time.
So at what point, and maybe it's not there yet, but I feel like you're getting more comfortable with it. You're really confident with the calls. You're staying consistent. But how many how many sellers do you think it took for you to talk to be like, okay, I understand that there's only 6 responses. I understand like I know in the first 30 seconds if this is going to be somebody that's going to work with me. I understand the tone that I have to use. How long or how many conversations did you have to really feel comfortable?
Oh man. I want to say, well, because I'm still, of course, learning, and there's something that I'm learning all the time after each conversation that I had. I look back and I'm like, man, I should have asked more questions and listened because I feel like I jumped the gun and tried to answer a question that they didn't even ask,
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things. But I think it took me maybe even a good month or two just because, I get so nervous. So it wasn't something that I got used to immediately, and I'm just like, oh, hey,
I could
not
talk to
a
anybody.
talker
Yeah.
like the yes, yes. So it took me a while to feel comfortable, but again, it was just you just have to do it. I mean, I know that I didn't want to do mailers. I know that I just didn't want to use any other marketing method aside from cold calling. So, just have to keep at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. So let's break it down. Let's break down this deal because I love it. So give us when we break it down, let's break it down by the 4 pillars of pre-qualifying. And if you're listening to this for the first time, you want to understand how to pre-qualify a motivated seller. It's based on 4 things: condition of the property, their
Mhm.
timeline to sell, their
Mhm.
motivation to sell, and the price. So let's
Mhm.
start with, you were calling what list? What list was it that you were calling?
It was a absentee owner list,
Okay.
specifically out of state absentee owners.
Out of state absentee owners. Where did you pull
Yeah.
the list from?
I think it might have even been from List Source
List source.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about being in either the Wholesaling Inc. program or the TTP program is you get list source at 3 cents an address, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal because it's usually
Yeah.
like 9 or whatever. But so
Yeah.
you pulled the list, absentee owners that were out of state,
Mhm.
and you started calling and you talked to who picked up?
Well, this one, so huh, this the seller was she owned it with her then husband. But she was the breadwinner, and she was the one who was paying everything. The ex-husband had never contributed anything financially,
Okay.
but yeah, they owned it together because that's what they had in the divorce decree, that they would co-own the house. Very difficult,
Got it. So
complicated
were they
situation.
recently divorced, or were they divorced for a while?
They had been divorced for a while, but the thing was that he was still they didn't have any like official alimony or anything like that, but I don't know what happened in her marriage that made her feel obligated to do so, or if it was just from the kindness of her heart. She was still paying him on a monthly basis, an unofficial alimony per se.
Got it. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Got it. And so the condition of the property. Let's start there.
Condition was so honestly, this one was a blind offer. I called, the house is newer. It was built in like 98.
Oh wow. Okay.
98, 99. She hadn't seen the house in about 10 years, so she didn't really know what the condition was either. She was like, I think it's good. And that the price was right. I jumped on it, and that was that. I was like, I'll figure it out. I'll check it out, and I'll figure it out if we need to go lower. And I told her that too. I was like, if I go and your tenants have punched holes in the walls or whatnot, then we'll come back to the table and see, discuss numbers again. But otherwise, the price is right. I jumped on it and
So
went.
when you went to the property, there's tenants in it,
Mhm.
and were
Yeah.
they month to month or was it a long term?
It was actually long term till December,
Okay.
but they were understanding of the situation. However, they didn't have money. So I actually had to pay for their moving expenses. It was a 3,000 square foot house, and she was a hoarder, so it was quite daunting. So
So what
this
is that?
this
What is that? So walk me through that. How does that happen? So do you get? Does the transaction close? You get paid, and then you pay movers to help them.
No, I took a risk. I took a risk. I went out on a limb on this. And the tenant had fibromyalgia, she had vertigo, and she wasn't making a lot of money or anything like that. And she said, I would move, I get it, but I just don't have the money to move.
Right.
I said, well, you know what? I'll pay for it. And at the time, I really could not afford to do that. But, she needed help. It was the only way that it was going to happen. Went out on a limb, and I did it.
So you hire movers to move
I hired movers to move these people
like
personally.
all their stuff, or did they throw out a bunch of stuff, or how
They
does it?
they had to leave a bunch of stuff behind just because the place that they were moving to simply didn't have enough space to accommodate all her belongings. It
Yep.
just didn't.
Yep.
That being said, she still wanted, like 3/4 of the house with her. But yeah, it was a lot of stuff.
What did
Yeah.
it cost you? Do you remember?
It was actually close to like 1,700, and I
Oh
was
my
like, "Oh
gosh.
my goodness!" And the thing was that this ex-husband was trying to be tricky, so he didn't show up to closing a couple of times, and I was nervous, but I did put a memorandum so that at least if anything happened, I could be compensated for the moving expenses. That was I had invested money into it. I felt it was only fair that I
Love
would
it.
get that back. So again, that whole thing of everything will be all right. It's like, if it falls through, eventually they're gonna sell it. They would have to, and so it'll be all right.
So you mentioned a memorandum there, and for anybody that's not familiar, basically when you get a purchase contract on a property, and my strong advice is this: if you're whatever state you're in, talk to a real estate attorney and get a memorandum drawn up for your state specifically. But basically, what it is you've got a contract to purchase the property. That's the seller is in contract with you. If they breach that contract, you've got a couple different kind of safety nets that you can use. One being a memorandum saying, hey, I have a contract on this property. They're not fulfilling. They're breaching the contract, and this memorandum is filed against their title. Okay, so it clouds their title, so they're not able to transfer title through a title company or closing attorney typically without removing that. And to remove that, they either have to pay or it goes into the courts or goes into some sort of legal action. So definitely talk to an attorney about that. But it is a protection if your sellers start getting wiggly on a deal where they have committed to you and you've committed to them, and then all of a sudden you've got a buyer that you have a cash buyer that's closing on it, or this is a deal that you really want. It just helps protect you. Just look it up, Google it, and talk to an attorney in your area because it is powerful. I am telling you, it is powerful when people start getting a little bit tricky. Because listen, the sellers that we work with, like Jenny's talking about, sometimes they're not they're not responsible people. They don't keep their word. They don't they kind of they're very impulsive, and they have ideas, and people start talking to them, and they start having different plans, and they're not committed to what they signed off on, which is a big problem. So when they try to breach, definitely have some protection for that. So you had the memorandum. You were like, okay, I'm protected here, but it sounded like the guy came back.
He did eventually. So the thing is that it worked to our benefit that she was paying him because he was living off of her check, essentially. He never got a job since they had divorced years ago. And so she said, I am not going to pay his check if he does not sign
Got
these
it.
documents, because he was essentially being greedy. He was like, no, I want to sell for more, because it did appraise for more, to be fair. But the thing was that she rented the house out 10 years ago so that it just covered everything. 10 years, now that the house needs repairs, now that the taxes have gone up, she was losing money on a monthly basis, and he wasn't helping her out with any of the
Yep.
expenses. So she was like, I'm done. I want to get rid of this house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for him to say, no, I want more. I'm going to sit on this and just not sign until we get something more, because he wasn't losing any money on a monthly basis.
Incredible.
So, yeah, so the motivation was definitely there. But again, finally, once he was like, I really need that check. And I made sure she wasn't going to get legally in trouble, that it was no, court order for that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So finally he's like, fine.
I love it.
I'll sign the papers. So
yeah.
That's how we got it done. Yeah.
I love it. So condition, you'd say cosmetic rehab?
Some cosmetic rehab. It needed some upgrades like the water heater and whatnot. All of that. I think they were, whoever built it wasn't thinking right, because it didn't accommodate the size of the house. So either the AC would be on upstairs and not downstairs, vice versa. The water wouldn't heat if, God forbid, two people wanted to shower at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
One of them showering with cold water. And so it was slightly more than cosmetic, but not really that much, It wasn't like the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Yeah. It wasn't like a fire burnt. So the motivation was she was just done with it. She just didn't want to deal with it anymore, wanted to get that tie that she had with her ex-husband done. Or severed and be done with it. And then their price. Let's get down to price. So totally fixed up. What does this thing sell for? Totally beautiful, pristine. What does it go for on the market?
$245, $250, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. And you locked it up for how much?
$100.
You locked it up for $100,000.
$100,000.
And cleaned up, it goes for $240.
Yeah, I would say $250 is very fair. $245 minimum, $250. Yeah.
And how much repairs do you think would 3,000 square feet, that could eat up a lot of repairs.
Yeah, so I would say maybe like 35, 40-ish.
And what did you sell it for?
I sold it for $134.
$134.
$134.
So what did you net, like in your bank account going to Jenny? What did that like?
So it was like 33,910. So I'll say 34 because it's sexier.
Yeah, it sounds way sexier. $34,000 from a phone call. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I love it. I got to wait for my microphone to get back in so it works okay. Because sometimes that bell affects it, but
it blows out the whole
$34,000 calling
yeah.
when your baby is sleeping and turning that in. I mean, what did it do to your head? I mean, once you get that deal and you get that check and it's in your account and you're sharing this whole experience with your husband, how are you feeling?
Oh, man. So I feel like, because I had done some deals before, and really a lot of it, I had to change the strategy as I went because baby's growing, different stages, yada, yada. A lot of it was JVing, but this one I did entirely by myself. It was not easy. Both the sellers were trying to ghost me all the time. And I had to print out the Zillow page of that house. And I taped it on my door and said, "Don't give up." And it really just kind of affirmed that that persistence is key. I came in to do the marathon, not the sprint. And so I kept having to remind myself that, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. I just really feel like that, for some reason, that was the deal where I'm like, damn, I'm a wholesaler.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And here's the thing. That stays with you forever. You have that forever. Now it's just building on it. You know what I mean? This is not learning this. The wholesaling business isn't just for the next year, for the next couple of years. This could be a lifetime business that pays you and your family forever. It's
Yeah.
building on, just keep scaling up. Use the actual data, the actual numbers that you look at to understand how many people do I have to talk to get a deal. Okay, and then how many people can I hire somebody else to help me with this? Can I hire somebody else to do this? Can I hire
Yeah.
somebody else? All of a sudden, you've got a business of
Mhm.
wholesaling real estate. Now, you take wholesaling out of it. I know that this podcast is Wholesaling Inc., but take wholesaling out of it. It's
Mhm.
just sourcing real estate opportunities.
Yeah.
So you can do now. You have the opportunity to do whatever you want with it. Wholesale it, keep it, flip it,
Yeah.
develop it. Do you've got so many opportunities. It's incredible, but you need to have that big chunky deal, that big 30, 40, 50, $60,000 deal to really blow your hair back and really be like, holy cow, this is incredible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Unfortunately, our military don't get paid nearly enough, but
Mhm.
I imagine $34,000 is a huge amount coming
Yeah.
in to a military family.
Well, I mean, the thing was that my annual salary working 9 to 5 as a processor was like 40.
Right.
And so I just made my annual salary in one deal, got to spend a lot more time with my kids. And it's just, it doesn't even compare.
Yeah.
I just thought, I thought for a long time that, again, I didn't have a career. And because we move around a lot, I just thought that making a lot of money was just not in my cards.
Yep.
So this definitely gave me it it made me have to level up and think differently about myself and my future. Yeah, I'm really excited
You're
about
incredible. You
it.
are incredible. And you know what? It's really, I love, people like whatever, Lamborghinis, people like big mansions, people like these exotic trips. I think the most important thing that wholesaling provides is a freedom of schedule, right?
Yeah,
Freedom of
yeah,
schedule to spend that time with your kids when they're young, to be able to move around your schedule, to be able to do all these different things. That's why being
absolutely.
proactive in this business, that's why being, talking to people every single day, or picking up the phone and being proactive is so powerful, because you get to do it on your own schedule,
Yeah,
right? As opposed to waiting for people to call you and then having to run around with your hair on fire, drop everything, which you
yeah,
can't, and then
yeah.
if you don't make that call in time, you lose that deal. So it's just you're a prime example of being proactive, doing things when you have opportunities, short little bursts of time of opportunities, and then doing something great with it, making income, making big checks, and having that freedom of schedule. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank
So
you.
so give first of all, if people want to reach out to you, they're inspired by you, they want to just communicate with you, what's the best way? Is there an Instagram or a Facebook or an
Yeah.
email?
So on Instagram, you can find me as Mama Buys Houses. On Facebook, you can find me under Jenny, a little difficult last name, Teruya, Teruya, Ordonez. Or you could email me at ordonez.properties@gmail.com. But I would say Facebook or Instagram would be the way to go.
Awesome, awesome. And then give us some final words. Give us some final, like if you were speaking to somebody that is, was in your shoes, or is thinking about doing their first deal, or wants to be inspired. Like, just give them a little bit of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually spoke to a couple people recently that said, I was four months into wholesaling. I never had a deal, so I just quit. Can't believe you're still doing it. Or, someone else. I tried doing it, didn't have the support system. So it just didn't work out for me. And the thing was that a support system, I feel like, is something that you have to proactively create, just like you TTP, but it's not just with sellers, it's also fellow wholesalers, investors. I mean, I feel like a lot of the reason I'm still here is because of other wholesalers.
Mm-hmm.
And if they see you grinding and working hard, they're going to want to help you and give you tidbits and reach out to you. Or if you're going through a funk, they'll say, hey, I was there too. I didn't get my first deal for 3 months. And even when I got my first deal, it was something that I had to JV on. And again, when you're networking and you find genuine people, you're going to find people that you can JV with if you just absolutely don't get it. So I feel like networking is really important. Go to all of the free, lunch and learn seminars, all those kinds of things, and build your circle. Just don't ever try and be the smartest person in your inner circle. Don't be on an island. This is all things that have been said before, but I really, really feel like that's a big, big portion of why I'm still wholesaling today.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
If you are listening out there and you are interested in joining the most proactive group in real estate investing, if you're looking to not be on that island by yourself, go to wholesalinginc.com/TTP. Join Jenny. Join the absolute best people around the country, around the world in this TTP program, in the TTP family. Check it out, wholesalinginc.com/TTP. Scroll around. If it feels good in your gut, set up a call. I'd love to work with you personally and introduce you to Jenny. But yeah, Jenny, thank you so much for being on here. It is just an incredible story, and I think that you're going to speak to a lot of people out there that are really, their schedule is really congested. They've got a lot of responsibilities, and they've got a lot of passions, and they're just looking for an example of somebody that's done it and done it well, and is happy and continues to do it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, I encourage everybody, as always, to go out and talk to people. Until next time, love you. See ya.